And to kick things off, we have a presentation by Mathias Schollmeyer. I hope that I pronounced it correctly, which is a principal solutions consultant for fraud and identity at LexisNexis Risk Solution. Welcome.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thanks for all the panelists for sharing their thoughts earlier. It was a lot to take in, and to be honest, I'm not sure I should continue with my presentation now, but I think there's so much to talk about. But I will try to focus on mine. And thanks for having me. I'm Mathias Schollmeyer. I'm an information security and cyber expert. I've been in this industry now for more than 15 years. Across different regions and industries, and I'm happy to be here today. Last week I've been to a different region and similar discussions. I was actually waiting for AI to be ticked off the checkbox list, like, okay, when will it come up? I didn't see it in the agenda, but then it came up. Of course, this is something that, it was also a banking summit, by the way, last week, but it was most of the discussions and conversations were around AI and data. And I will use this as a segue into why I'm standing here or who I'm working for. I'm part of LexisNexis Risk Solutions. And for those of you who know LexisNexis from the legal side, that's not what I'm talking about today. We are actually a solution providing data for our consumers and customers to make more informed decisions around risk and opportunity. So this can be quite practical examples, like when you onboard customers, know your customers, you can do screening, you do AML, PAP checks, transaction monitoring, and there's another side of the business. This is where I'm part of fraud and identity. So we look at what's going on with identities around user, where are opportunities, and where is risk involved here. And if you want to talk to one of my colleagues, we have a stand outside. Feel free to chat to us or just follow me around after the presentation, and I'm happy to answer your questions. As part of our solution portfolio, we have a global crowdsourced intelligence network where all of our customers contribute into this huge, basically a data lake, where we see roughly 100 billion transactions annually. So no matter if one of our customers is in travel, in banking, in streaming, or in any other digital service, whenever one of their end users, one of their consumers makes the transaction, they call us and we make a risk assessment for them. So we have this huge data about devices, about identities, digital identities, about email addresses, telephone numbers, and IP addresses in particular. And our customers use that data to make more informed decisions when it comes to opportunities, when we talk about user experience, user centricity, buzzwords or topics that were touched upon earlier. You can use this to make it seamless and frictionless for your consumers to access the service they actually want to use. The other side, the risky side, is of course sometimes all of these applications and services you are offering, they are also used by the malicious intent, by the fraudsters, by the hackers. And before I go into much more detail about all the things we are seeing, we still have to take a step back and look what happened in the last couple of years. So I'm pretty sure all of you remember PSD3. When that was brought in, it enhanced security and it strengthened the security posture of organizations to protect the consumers. This was really good for a lot of the business. Well, it added, in some areas it added friction, but overall it helped protect the consumers. And protecting the consumers in a technical, in a digital channel means for fraudsters, they have to look at other channels. So what have consumers, what have fraudsters, what have organizations done in the last few years? Of course, we had the pandemic. The pandemic did accelerate digital transformation, whereas up to the pandemic, Digital transformation, we had really great examples with banking apps in Romania in the last session here. But this is not just for banking or not just for apps. There has been, across all generations, the adoption of digital channels has increased massively. And just on over 22% globally, what we see in our customer base for the last 2 years. This also means there was a huge investment. So if you look at the 2022 numbers, almost $2 trillion US dollars. The forecast for 25 is even almost $3 trillion. And all of this was driven by the mobile adoption. So a lot of end users, consumers, did not even use their desktop, their laptops anymore. They actually went straight to or adopted much more mobile application, mobile services. So on a global level, 75%. And some of the numbers that were shared earlier do align with what we are seeing for Romania, for example, as well. But there's also, again, the customer experience side. This has driven a really high demand. So there's examples like when we talk about conversation rates, authentication rates, it needs to happen now, pretty much in real time. If we don't risk assess and let an end user allow access to a service immediately, like after 10 seconds or 12 seconds, they will actually question if this is a legitimate service. Is this actually your bank? Is this a good web shop? If it's not fast enough, if you are not having that experience we were talking about, or the others were talking about earlier, they will go to another provider, they will go to another web shop, they will really ask, is this the right service to use? So it has to be fast, and it has to be flash and nice, and what we heard about earlier, they are really into the features, but it still needs to be easily accessible. And we again can see these numbers in our solution, in our digital identity network, where you can see the transaction amount increasing over time and over time again. And again, there's big predictions for the next couple of years. But then if we more specifically not just look at the opportunities, but also at the challenges, we do see fraud not being limited to borders. Fraud happens across borders. The attackers, the fraudsters, they don't know borders. They don't care about where you're based. They are just trying to extract the money. And if we then go into some of those details, there's two sides we like to highlight. Number one is the human-initiated attacks. These so-called scams. Sometimes they're called app fraud, app scams, authorized push payments, coaching, spoofing even sometimes. But when we talk about it, it really means someone on the phone or initially via an email will contact the victim and will walk them through a process. So from a banking side of view, it looks like the legitimate customer. It looks like Mathias going into the online banking and making that payment. It was actually me. It was my device. It was my phone. It was my location was at home. But what you also need to know is, was it actually my typical behavior? Was it really Mathias doing this, or was it coached by someone else? The other side, in terms of those numbers, that is important is the automated attacks. And this is probably more, it's really much more on an infrastructure technical area. But when you talk about bots, whenever I hear the term chatbot, I have to chuckle a little bit, because chatbot is just one type of a bot. There's a completely different definition of a bot, as we call it, and this means automated attacks, where you basically have software attacking a website, a service, a login website, for example. And logins is a really good example for bots. They will steal data, or they get data from the dark web, and will just test those stolen credentials again and look inside. So PSD3 with SCA helped a lot when it comes to that scenario. But there's other markets, other industries, they are not mandated by the same rules and regulation. We see a lot of growth in that data and in that area, but in particular when it comes to the human-initiated attacks, the scams, there's also massive growth in the last couple of years. And going back to some of those numbers we're seeing with our customers, the digital identity network, in short, DIN, on the slide, we can see on a global level, the transactions are growing year over year. I was talking about the 100 billion last year. So the year before it was roughly 75 billion. the human-initiated attacks rise or increase, as well as the bots. And then I will have some updated numbers around Romania. So this is just an extract of a few months from Romania, actually last quarter. We had more than 16 million transactions originating just from Romania, and almost 86.5% from mobile devices. And almost half of them were app-based, or not browser-based, actually app-based. And then more specifically, one of our Romanian customers, over a period of 2 months, we analyzed some of the data, and in total we were able to prevent more than $11 million in fraud in just those 2 months. And the number one fraud modus operandi, MO, the fraud scenario, was scam scenario. And this was over a transaction, or over a period of 2 months, 60 days, with roughly 5 million transactions. The second most used scenario, most dangerous scenario was actually chargeback fraud, but the scam is actually the number one. And we're seeing this not just across Romania, we're seeing this across the whole globe about all our customer base. And as LexisNexis Risk Solution, we do release a cybercrime report on an annual basis. And as part of the cybercrime report, we release these stats you can see here. So these are contributed from our customer base. Every single time fraud is detected and marked in the network, in the solution, we actually want to know, and it is quite important, the context of that fraud that happened. And as you can see here, even though it's just slightly, but the number one fraud scenario is scam, not just in Romania, actually across the globe. So again, it's a borderless issue. And a lot of this has been driven by PSD2 and fraudsters moving from rather technical solutions to the weakest link in the chain, the human. And the news are full of this. This is not just the issue you know as banks, or we know as a fraud solution provider. If you open a newspaper or website, every single day there's news. You can see news from the UAE, from Poland, from France, from the United Kingdom. It's all over the place. So something needs to happen. And this is where we think, from our point of view, PSD3 is actually originated from. It's a reaction, from a fraud perspective, to what has been going on for the last couple of years. And I have to call this out. LexisNexis Risk Solutions, we are not legal counselors, so this is not legal advice. I'm an information security and cybersecurity specialist. So if you ask for legal advice over there, there's a few you can talk to. However, our take from a solution provider is really, there's 6 key areas when it comes to PSD3 that are interesting and worth watching once it will come into force. And a comment on that side, again, I'm not part of the process, I'm not a legal counselor, but we've seen before, there's consultations going on, there will be technical standards that need to be released, and then there will be questions and answering sessions. So even though there's a target for PSD3, it might slip a few months maybe, but my advice is just, follow the news, get in early, start early, so you be ready. Coming back to the fraud side of the things, why PSD3, what they are doing there. So in fraud mitigation area, one of the key things we are seeing, and we think is a good idea, generally speaking, is the reimbursement rights. So right now, the scams I was talking about, where someone coaches you through, it is really difficult to detect. But with the right solution in place, where you take in several signals, several layers of information, like our platform can offer, it is able to detect that. So as a bank, it's not enough to just say, this was the customer. No, it actually wasn't the customer, and you will be able to prove this. But then you also will have to reimburse the victim in that kind of scenario. The other area that is interesting is the enhanced identity verification area. So in every single time you make a transfer, into a SEPA transfer, or generally bank There needs to be an identity verification just as simple as an IBAN and account name matching, but this is a really small step to achieve a lot. Just checking if the money where it's going to actually belongs to the person you're trying to pay. And the last area I want to highlight is information sharing. Looking at our solution, we have a global contributory network where our customers share positive and negative feedback about transactions. With the PSD3, they are working on there's the plan of creating a legal framework to actually be allowed to share that information between the payment service providers. And this is something we've been doing for a long time already. So we're experienced in that area, but it's good to finally see a legal framework for that. The second area is the fairer competition area. And actually, let me build up the slide a little bit, because I think the next 1, 2, 3, 4 areas are very, very close to each other. Fairer competition, simplification, customer rights, and open banking. These are the other key areas of PSD3. So when we talk about fairer competition, it means easier or greater access for PSPs. Not a million trillion different API endpoints, protocols, and things that technical people do enjoy but do get lost in. It should be easier for fintechs, for banks to interoperate, to offer a service to the end user. And this will also enable will improve competition, but it's basically just a level playing field. And this simplification in the fairer competition area means standardizing APIs and also having a regulatory umbrella to make it easier for fintechs and for banks to really regulate and, from a technical point of view, being able to provide these services. And as a customer, the standardization means, for me, it's easier to get access to my data. So if you have payment information about me, I want to know this. And in case you've not realized, I'm from Germany, so we are famous for the data privacy concerns. And one of the key things about GDPR is, of course, having access to that, being able to ask, delete, move the data. And this is a good thing. And part of that whole approach, what the PSD3 is also suggesting, is to be able to, as a consumer, to see that data in one place, to have a dashboard. So what kind of data is available? What data am I sharing with a party, with a payment service provider, a third-party provider in that service? So this is, from my point of view, all really good, a really great approach. But it comes, again, back to something which for me was already one of the biggest enhancements or benefits of PSD2, the open access and open banking approach. Mandating or being able to view all my account statements in one single dashboard or app or service, I think that is a breakthrough. It's probably not quite as adopted as everyone was hoping at this stage, but I think we're getting there. And by standardizing protocols and the regulation and the services, I think this will improve even further in the future. And PSD3 will work on that. I will mandate, I will ask for additional improvements in that area. And last but not least, because of my origin, in Germany, cash is still king. If I go to the bakery, actually since COVID, the bakery now accepts cards. But if I go anywhere else, there's no cards. If you go to the restaurant, if you go to the hairdresser, it's all cash. So there's a big concern around being able to deliver cash. And having the infrastructure of cash machines, again in Germany, a lot of the cash machines are gone now. So part of PSD3 is to arguably deregulate or to have a better framework around how consumers can get cash. There's new opportunities. Right now, if I go to the supermarket, I have to buy something to make a purchase, and then I can also get a cash out. So they want to remove that bit. So if you go to the supermarket and you need cash, you can just get cash. So this, again, I think this is good for those people who rely on cash. I personally am more a card person, but yeah, that's me. So this was a whistle-stop walkthrough about some of the PSD3 things that are coming. again, it's a lengthy process. So we are not necessarily speaking for the regulator, but what we can do is ask you to be prepared, to be a little bit prepared about what's coming. So what we suggest is engage and review the press releases or the releases that are coming up as they are published. There's a consultation period, get involved, budget for the change. It's all really surprising. And I remember in the UK, it was only a year or two ago when the timeline of implementing strong custom authentication eventually passed. So it took since 2015 till 2022. So that's a long time. So budget for the change. And scale your teams to manage the BAU, means business as usual. So the things that are going on anyway, if you're providing new products, new services, it's crazy out there already. And then there's PSD3 coming. So be prepared, budget for it, and start early. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions or?
So, any questions? If not, I encourage you to chat with Mathias here. He'll be staying in the hotel, and they also have a booth. So please ask him any kind of questions about risk and cybersecurity. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.